This is New England Soccer Weekly with Tom Quinlan, Nick Giuliano, and Mike DeSilva on 790 The Score.
All right, well, a crappy May led to a better June, and now an interesting July. Hello, boys and girls. Welcome on into another edition of New England Soccer Weekly. Mike, Nick, guys, how are you?
What's up?
Happy whatever day it is you're listening to or watching this.
Right. Because you could either be watching this on Friday, Saturday, or most of you watch this after the game happens anyways.
Right.
So, always here to
Taking
entertain.
receipts. That's why they're taking receipts.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Good June. Honestly, I think, and I brought this up with...
great June.
Yeah. Listen, I think, before we get to the transfer rumor stuff, I think that by going undefeated in the month of June here, it wipes away that terrible May. It almost feels like
Well, you could
May
say half
doesn't
of
even
May.
exist
you
anymore.
could say half of May because it's 6 games in a row with points.
Yeah.
So it's the entire month. It's a
That's
few
fair.
at the end of May. It's been a good run.
Yeah, and I think, it's just kind of what we expected. They had a small little blip there at the beginning of the month of May. And
It could have been a little rocky finish to end the month of June, too, by the way. We'll get to the game itself in a minute.
It could have, and, we also, I feel as if, didn't completely go down the slope. Did it look like the trajectory was heading, which was down, injuries starting to pile up. They balanced it out, and they've been able to find points in the last month, so it's been nice.
And we talk about this all the time when you listen to this podcast. It is a 6-month season for a reason.
Yeah.
This is usually when the average teams, the below-table teams, they have hiccups, and then they can't recover, and then the season's pretty much clapped. This is what you want right now. You want points. You want draws. You want wins. You want to hopefully get people healthy as we trend into August.
Into
so
the end of this
season.
Yeah.
It's a good run right now.
And you remain undefeated at home. It's the best start to any home run in Revolution history. And the one refrain that all the guys keep on going back to, whether it be Bruce or the guys in the locker room, win your home games, the rest of it doesn't matter. Right. And they've done that so far this year.
And look at this matchup that we're going to be talking about throughout the show and break down with another Apple personality this weekend. 2 teams at the top of the table. Both teams haven't lost at home yet.
Right.
But it's another game where you're going to have some bodies missing. The Cincinnati has their guys missing because of Gold Cup. You're going to have your, really just DeJuan Jones missing. So I think it should be maybe a little bit of an advantage to you going into this weekend versus Cincinnati.
I would think so, but and I know this is circle on the schedule like you said last week, but what happens in this game, again, isn't like it's not going to predict what's going to happen towards the end of the season.
No.
But Cincinnati's coming off a loss, but to your point, I mean, there's a ton of players missing. They've played so much soccer over the last 30 days, so you can't really take that 3-0 DC loss, give them that much credit. I mean, credit to DC for the result, but if that wasn't an FC, the Cincinnati team that we're going to see or the Revolution are going to see on Saturday night is not what we saw and they saw last week.
This is what makes me hate the MLS schedule, by the way. I mean, a game like this, regardless, predicting where the 2 teams are going to be in the standings, you can't do that. It doesn't feel like, because the Revs and Cincinnati played a couple of really tight games last year, that should be a game that's in the middle of the international window.
It's tough to debate because the first game 1-1 at Gillette Stadium, it was a great game, one of the best that we saw. And you're right, Tom. This weekend, kind of having it buried at the end of June, but it seems like we're losing it.
It also, in defense of the schedule makers, which for no reason at all, you also didn't expect Cincinnati to be off to the start that they've had. You knew they were going to be a quality team.
Sure.
But did you expect them to be, we're talking July 1st, where both these teams are going to be undefeated at home, Cincinnati sitting top of the East and the Revolution right behind them. You can't necessarily say you would have predicted that.
No, you can't necessarily say that. It's just it's from the standpoint of this game should not define either team for the rest of the season.
No, and it won't.
It's not going to.
What and that's you would like to see a little bit more. You want to. This is the closest we've been to seeing a fully healthy Revs roster for the most part here.
It will be weighted that way by a lot of people online, though. It will be looked at as if this is
Let me just say something.
End of August game. Oh boy,
the people online are idiots.
Yeah,
90% of them.
I've been telling you this for years.
You're right. 90% of the people online are idiots. Most of the people that are, just rational thinking people are not. But anyways.
That number, that percentage doesn't bode well for you two on the show then.
In regards to what?
Just being part of the 90%. Someone's got to be part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, well, You live and you live. You know, you make your own bed.
Yeah.
So
This is what we're here, though. We can talk about it. That's what the show does.
So we said that the Revs finished out the month of June undefeated here. They'll, go into July. Unbeaten since May 28th. And they haven't lost in over a month. The last time you lost was that 3-0 drubbing versus the Philadelphia Union. But, man, that was, out of all of the performances that we've seen them have, the most frustrating felt like this Toronto game. Because, Toronto gets out to a hotter start than any of us would have imagined after they take their 3-0 drubbing midweek from FC Cincinnati. It was so flat compared to the last two home performances.
But
I think you really have to be. Okay. But
go ahead.
No.
Finish,
What's the but?
Finish my statement.
I mean, but
I can't.
Wasn't it almost set up
Of course
that
you
way,
can.
though? Wasn't it almost set up that way? I feel as if this is the same trap, quote unquote trap, that they fell into with the first Inter Miami match.
They
where it
play
was
down to teams.
They play down to teams. They've been continuing. I
But
feel like this is an
what's
issue.
different about this game?
They didn't lose.
Yes.
It
I
doesn't matter.
understand that.
Wait a second. It does matter.
It does matter. It does matter in the standings. To look at a full 90-minute performance.
You come out flat
It's
for
a-
15, you end up winning 2-1. That's a good
I
result.
think it came out longer for flat than 15.
I think they looked flat for a longer amount of time to me. They really picked it up in that second
you're right.
half.
Maybe for maybe the first 25. Now that I'm looking back,
Yeah,
to
I'd
it.
say the majority of the first half it looked really bleak there for a bit, but then they picked it up. They played a lot better in the second half.
Yeah, after the goal, after the 33rd minute, then you
Yeah.
saw them come to life. Which, by the way, that happens. That's soccer. That's a game.
And I mean, overall, you still get the result that you wanted, and we've talked about it ad nauseum now. When they had the supporter shield year, they found ways to win games, especially late. When they were down a goal, they never were out of a game, and this is what you continue to see from this team again this year.
And if this is becoming a pattern over a month and a half, then it's different. But this is where I get crazy with people. Like, you want them to win every game and win all 90 minutes and score 7 goals and give up. It just doesn't work that way. So you come out flat. You give up a goal in the 11th minute. By the way, really nice goal. I know Toronto's at the bottom of the table, but they have some really good offensive players. They scored a nice goal on you. Now, there was miscommunication in the back, probably because your left back was new and just got integrated back in there. Regardless, you get down 1-0. You come back over the course of 90 minutes, and you're able to score twice, pull out a victory. They kind of coasted, I would say, for the last, 15, 20 minutes of the game as well.
So So really, we're
What are you
talking
gonna
about
do?
maybe a 20-minute spurt where they really played well the other night.
Enough to win.
But that's but
You build.
But that fine. I get you build, but it just wasn't the most convincing performance. After first off, at the end of that game, you almost allowed Bob Bradley to keep his job for another week because you almost gave up a goal at the end of the game.
I thought that was
so my problem is that.
Tough offsides call.
Sure.
Tough.
Do you find a way to get a win? Do you find a way to pull out a result when things aren't going your way? Yeah, that's great and all. But then you compare this game to the last two teams against Florida that you just played, between Orlando and Miami, and what sticks out to you? You finish those games. You close out those games. You didn't close out this game versus Toronto.
I mean, you did because you won.
Sure, if you want
So
to take the
because
Bruce
of-
Arena,
because- No, that's not Bruce Arena. That just so
and he was
because-
offsides.
True, but that's what the call was.
Right, that's what I mean.
So because it wasn't pleasing to you, Tom, because they didn't finish the way that you want, that's what you're upset about.
Little things that matter.
Seems kind of wild.
It's not just – it's little things that build up when we're talking about what's going to be the difference maker for this team. Obviously, you're not playing, full strength right now, but it just wasn't, of all the home performances, it's okay to say this one sucked the most.
And it felt like Petrovic had way too many. It was needed way too many times at the end of the game as well.
Didn't
really make anything ridiculous, any ridiculous saves, but definitely was tested a couple times where he did have to be in the right position.
So we talk about this, and it's difficult as a player, and it's a sports media storyline that maybe we can throw in the mix. Was that a look-ahead game? Kind of like DC United for FC Cincinnati, even though they were down players. Is this we're playing the top dog a week from tonight?
Well,
we're playing a team at the bottom of the table right now. Maybe we don't have to worry about it.
That's exactly
as
what
much.
we talked about last week on the show. We said that, this feels like a game that you shouldn't be. You can't look ahead to Cincinnati. You're kind of circling that game on the calendar because of the first place against second place, undefeated at home. But you cannot look, in any professional league, you cannot look ahead past an opponent. And I think for a little bit there they did. They got fortunate at the end of that when Signier was offsides. And
was he?
He was definitely
Yeah,
offsides.
I think so,
absolutely.
too.
100%.
The broadcast didn't think so.
No, he was 100% offsides.
But
absolutely.
Tom, if you phrase it differently, I will agree with you 100%. If you're looking at the last 6 games, if you're looking at the last month of June, this was definitely the weakest performance out of all of them, for sure. You're definitely right there.
Pretty much what I said.
And have we talked about who scored the game-winning goal yet, or no? We're gonna.
Well, we'll get to the Vrioni. Yeah, he scored. Vrioni came off the bench, scored right away. And I think it's him and the fact that him and Wood were able to connect. But Wood drops off the pass, and Vrioni, unorthodox. I mean, it looked pretty off balance the entire play, but you're able to still slide it home pretty early on in the second half there. So, hey, good. He always finds a way to score against the worst teams in the league. Show me against Cincinnati, which, by the way, you might need him this weekend versus Cincinnati because, again, Gustavo Bo is hurt. And I am such a fan of Gustavo, but I'm not blinded to the point where, I've said this for how long now? You've got to find a way to get him off this DP status. He is taking up a spot. Buy him down so you can open up another designated player spot. You have that one-time DP buyout. It's between Vrioni or Bo at this point. I'd give it to Bo. At least there's a lot more room to grow there with Vrioni. With Bo, if he's going to continue to get hurt like this, and we still have another 5 months to go here, there's just no point. He's hurting you more than he's helping you.
It's been pretty consistently injured for
the entire
over
year.
2 years now, yeah.
Yeah, for
last year as well.
So I think it's a problem.
It is because it's difficult the older you get as well. Just if you're playing consistently, it's different. But you play, you get injured, then you have to work yourself back. Then you play, you get injured, and you have to work. That's a revolving door that you just don't want to see.
Rinse, repeat, pretty much with this guy.
Don't want to see it.
So now it brings up the question: well, what do the Revs do in the transfer window? Well, now we're starting to get a little bit more clarity with what's happening here. How do you guys want to play this one? Do you want to start with what we did last week that almost set Montreal on fire, or do you want to start with the latest stuff that's come out?
Well, I think we should address potentially what we talked about last week.
Sure, we'll start there. It was on this show I said that I had a source very close to the situation that the Revs were in talks to try to bring in Victor Wanyama. That's all we said.
Right.
And that played out to be true. Now, whether or not the Revs get Victor Wanyama is another thing. Tom Bogert was on Revolution Recap the other night saying that from what he's heard from his sources is that they're saying don't look too much into it, but the Revs can make the deal happen financially because Wanyama is a designated player. He's saying how Wanyama could be brought down from designated player to TAM status, and he could still move to the Revs that way. So what I said yesterday is the same way I feel today, is that the deal probably doesn't happen, but that comes down to Montreal not wanting this deal to happen. Mm-hmm. It's not the Revs going to Tommy Bogert and saying, hey, Tommy, we're not pursuing this guy. In my opinion, Montreal went to Bogert and said, hey, the Revs came to us with this. We're not giving up Wanyama. And it comes down to either A, we don't want the money, or there's just not enough there to make that happen. So the Revs still need center midfield help. I think the Toronto game kind of showed that. I know we talk about Spalding, being thrusted into that position the other night, but I think Polster, if you lose Polster, this team is so screwed. And I think not having Noel Buck is actually hurting you more now too, because there's a lot of interesting things happening with Noel Buck. There's not a real big clarity on his injury status in general. I think they overused him to a certain extent this year because of all of the injuries that they did have. So he needed to take on a large role, but now that might have affected him too. So if you lose either Polster or Noel for an extended period of time here, you're essentially just relying on McCoon and Blessing, and neither of those guys have been good.
Yeah.
Blessing has not been good at all recently.
We've said it many times, but Polster is just an extremely important player on this team.
But not even he's had a good run, I don't think.
Yeah, but
I think he's had it rough.
You take him off of that team, and you see a difference.
He has definitely had. I think if you ask him, for the first how many games, it's 19 games. He's played a little bit down, but we talk about that position all the time. You need to have confidence in a player, whether he's playing good, bad, or indifferent. You have confidence in Matt Polster.
I'm plugging him in that spot on this team every game if I can.
That's what you want there.
Yeah, regardless. But yeah,
can we go back to something quick? Regardless, trending Tommy again.
Yeah, no.
You got to give it to this man.
People were not happy with him, that's for sure.
Trending Tommy.
Tommy Numbies.
500,000 views and counting.
Yeah.
And then he's trending in 2 countries.
Not bad.
2 languages. So that's
different
pretty
languages.
Fun.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Man.
That's pretty fun.
And it had nothing to do with his horrible French on last week's show.
A lot of people thought that was funny, though.
Yeah, it's great.
So that was good.
You know who we should thank for that information getting out there? Matt Cullen.
Matt Cullen.
Matt Cullen.
Because
he pressed you on your own show.
He did. And I was not going to drop it last week, but after we dropped it.
That was because, Mike, we talked about it after the show. I thought we were in agreement that you weren't going to say anything.
Right.
And then when you got pressed, sometimes you got to step up.
Sometimes you get,
That's it.
You can't get pressed on your own show. You got to just
we started the transfer rumor season here in this corner of the country, so that was a lot of fun.
That's part of the fun, though, is having the conversation, everybody gets so mad. I love the people that just get mad. Like, what are you mad about?
It goes back to the idiots.
What do you want how do you want to consume your information when it comes to soccer? Do you want to just sit here and just read, the same things that people are reading every day, or do you want to, stir the pot a little bit?
A lot of podcasts do that. Just pull up the stats
put up
what's the passing percentage and what's Tom's? What is he like? Goals created,
whatever,
chances, whatever.
Oh, I hate it.
I mean, wow.
Listen,
just have fun.
And for what it's worth, it's not just stirring the pot to stir the pot because I know how to do that.
You have a source.
I have sources.
You have a source.
I have sources. This one was a specific source on this specific story, but
and for the record, also in your defense, you never said it's a done deal. This is happening. You said there was some, there was some talks happening.
That wasn't denied. So we're just going to take
we
that
call
as
him Trending Tommy.
Trending Tommy, baby.
So it's right now. We brought up Wanyama. Doesn't seem like that's going anywhere. The other one that might happen is that. Apparently, the Revs are in a battle with Salt Lake right now to bring in Galatasarayan. Galatasaray? I don't know. I was trying to find a plural way of saying it. Galatasaray's midfielder, Taylon Antalili. I probably butchered that to no extent. But I couldn't tell you anything about him. Anybody that does in this area, probably lying to you. But the Revs are in the midfield market in general here. So they will, I think.
If you read a little bit about him, this seems like who we talked about last week, that outside winger presence.
No. This is the midfielder for Galatasaray.
So
you're talking about Tomas Chankly.
Oh, my bad.
You're talking about the 24-year-old. It's a good transition over to him.
Yes.
The 24-year-old Argentinian who came from.
That's who I'm talking
the same club team as Gustavo Bo.
Right.
That's who I read about last night, and it seems like
Tomas Chankly.
Again, we don't know much about the player, but reading and watching a few things, it seems to address what we were talking about with that position. But again, we got to see the player if the player comes here.
Yeah, listen, I think the upside is that this team's not going to be stagnant at the transfer deadline, and guess what? They can't, because if they are, they're just going to get smoked the rest of the season.
Well, you look across the board in all sports, when teams are where the Revolution are right now, this is the time where if you don't do anything, usually it's not to your advantage.
Right.
You got to do something.
We've mentioned that before too. We believe that this is a Bruce Arena that knows the window is, you don't want to say closing, but it's definitely not all the way open anymore. So you got to capitalize on it now.
It's like that. You see how tight that window is?
Yeah, it's getting there.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Bad visuals.
Showing you the
but
visuals.
the way that ended was not good for you. But
bad. We're gonna get banned
by the
on
way,
YouTube.
even if Dylan Barrero was healthy, still be making moves right now. So that obviously changes your thought process.
I think there's a little bit. No, I think they definitely still make moves for sure. But I think the pressure would be less knowing that you don't have multiple roles to
FC
fill.
Cincinnati's looking to make moves as well. This is what happened.
If you watch that Toronto game the other night, that Toronto game shows you every place this team needs help. You need help at outside back. You need help at midfield. You need help at winger, and you need help at striker. You need another striker.
Everybody.
Up there. But I think it's reality of the situation.
Yeah.
I really, because again, And we got to go to
Needs
Jake
help
Zivin in a
online?
minute
Yeah,
here.
we're against the clock here.
But you look at the way when they're pressing on a counterattack and they try to send something in the box, you can't send something in on an aerial cross because nobody's up there to fetch it. So you're always playing things direct and on the ground, and it's just going to get tougher because teams are starting to figure you out offensively. And eventually that's going to just come back to bite you in the rear end. So you have to go out there and find a reinforcement who's going to be more dangerous in the box. Bobby Wood's dangerous, but you need a bigger presence in there. So let's talk about that next with
And
Jake
Tom,
Zivin.
Tom wants it to be Adam Buxa.
Jake Zivin, MLS Season Pass coming up next. Okay, boys and girls, New England Soccer Weekly rolls along, on this Saturday or Friday. When are you listening? I don't know.
What's so funny?
Yeah, what is that?
Rolls along, New England Soccer Weekly.
Rolls like the ball rolls?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Didn't like it.
No, it's terrible.
We'll work
This
on
is
that one.
awful.
Jake didn't like it. We could see him.
I loved it. No, it's great. I'm all for the
All right.
puns.
All right,
As
fair.
many puns, go for it. Yeah.
Jake Zivin, he is one of the lead play-by-play announcers on MLS Season Pass. He got a chance to watch the Revs last weekend. Almost blow it versus Toronto FC. Maybe give Bob Bradley another week, but hey, the Revs ended Bob Bradley with TFC, got the win at the end of the day.
Big spot this weekend, though.
Big spot this weekend with the Revs and FC Cincinnati. Jake, welcome to Providence. How are you?
Hey, guys. I'm doing great. How are you guys doing? Happy to be here. It was great to be at Gillette last weekend. Can't wait for this. Is the biggest game of the year this weekend, right? 1 versus 2. Massive for the Supporter Shield race. So let's go.
The thing that sucks about it, and I hope the schedule makers are more aware of this moving forward, is that this is coming in the middle of the international window.
Mhm.
You know, and the thing that we mentioned in the first segment here is that you would love to have this be a barometer game to let you know where you are with Cincinnati, because it's clear that they're probably going to finish top 2, 3 in the Eastern Conference this year, but it's kind of uncertain where the Revs are going to finish because of all the injuries that they've had, and so all of that influx stuff. It's kind of hard to gauge, I think, really where the Revs sit against an FC Cincinnati team like this with how many bodies are going to be missing. Do you agree with that? That it's hard to really tell where both teams are at in the season after a game like this because of who's missing?
Look, first of all, we're trying to hype this game, so it's 1 versus 2. I don't care who's missing, right? No, I'm kidding. I agree. Here's the thing: from a schedule maker standpoint, you think back to December, January. Would this game have been predicted to be possibly determinative for the Supporter Shield race?
Which is what you said, Mike.
Right. Yeah.
No, right? You wouldn't. I mean, and that MLS is a league of parity. It is so hard to predict that. This isn't Man City versus Liverpool, right? Which, if you're the Premier League schedule makers, you're putting that game in a highlight important spot, because those, for at least the past 5 years, that's been the Premier League title race. Right now, for this upcoming year, you're going to throw Arsenal in there and making sure those games are kind of protected, so to speak, if you can, if it's smart. First of all, in MLS, that's incredibly hard to do from a prediction standpoint every year, to decide which regular season game is going to be like the determinative one for the Supporter Shield. I think MLS can do that with their big rivalry matches, for Hell is Real from an FC Cincinnati standpoint, for El Tráfico, for Portland, Seattle. But for this game, I don't think this would have been predicted as maybe a game between two Eastern Conference playoff teams, certainly, but 1 versus 2 in the Supporter Shield standings about 20 games into the year. I don't know who would have predicted that, but here's where we are. So let's go, man. It is massive. Look, if New England wins, it's a 4-point gap in the Supporter Shield race. And it's totally game on, race on, especially in MLS. If Cincinnati wins, the lead is back to at least 8 over a Nashville or an LAFC who has a game in hand. So that's not like a unsurmountable lead for Cincinnati, but it's a comfortable lead. So it's a huge game.
We're still here. The camera is having some issues, but as long as you can still hear us, we can still.
I can hear you guys still sound great.
All right, perfect.
Fantabulous.
So there's so many storylines going into this game, Jake, but one of them is that the team that's the home team has been unbeaten at home, and the team that's the away team also has that. I think that's probably why those two are in the top 5 of the table right now. But why do you think Cincinnati has been so great at home?
It's impressive. Look, in any way, to have a perfect record like that, 10-0-0, things have to go your way. You also have to play your best week in and week out, and that's not easy to do. It's the best home start in the history of the league. It's extraordinarily impressive. They have a very good home environment. I haven't been to TQL Stadium. This will be my first time. I can't wait. It's atop the list for me of stadiums that I haven't been to in MLS, which I think there's only 3 of them now. There'll be 2 of them after this weekend. Yeah. I haven't called a game in. So I'm buzzing to get there and to see what it's about. They've had great support since they came into the league in 2019, a support that deserves this kind of team, and certainly not the team that Cincinnati was on the field, at least the first 3 years, winning the wooden spoon 3 years in a row. They have a very good team as well, right? And good teams are going to be better at home. This is a league where, it doesn't quite have maybe the home field advantage that some other leagues do because of how much parity and competitive balance there is in MLS, but it's still going to go that way. So the best teams are going to have really, really good home records, right? And Cincinnati is one of those teams. Incredibly impressive what Chris Albright and Pat Noonan have done there to turn around a team that was obviously, as you guys know, being in the Eastern Conference, as everybody knows, was really bad for 3 years. But they're really good now. So I think that's just what it comes down to: being really good, playing in a great environment, and of course, getting some things to go your way along the way to be perfect, to be 10-0-0, which they are.
The new adage in sports is trust the process, right? I think the Philadelphia 76ers made that line famous. Could you say the same thing? Would you say the same thing for Cincinnati? They've just trusted the process over these past couple of years?
Man, I wouldn't equate it to that. It was very quick. They got it right, is what they did. They got it right with their GM hire in Chris Albright and their coach hire in Pat Noonan. They finally got it right, is what I should say, because it was immediate from 2021 to 2022 when Albright and Noonan came in and immediately turned them around to become a kind of a coherent playoff team, which was incredible. They had 20 points in 2021. 20 points, like in a 34-game season. That is brutal. And then they go up 29 points to 49 in 2022, make the playoffs as the 5 seed, win a game in the playoffs. So the process from year 1 with Pat Noonan and Chris Albright to year 2, I think is that way. Like, that's why we're seeing them being so good this year, is because now it's a season and a half into the Pat Noonan era and the Chris Albright era. But that jump from just hiring them, right, and the immediate impact they had is incredibly impressive, and something that I don't think many people saw coming.
Well, a big reason for that has obviously been the play of Luciano Acosta.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you this from a broadcaster perspective, Jake. You have Acosta on one side, you have Carlos Hill on the other. I mean, how great is your job on Saturday night?
Absolutely. It's 2 of the best number 10s, 2 of the best playmakers in the league. We're going to build that matchup up, right, throughout the broadcast. And we're going to be looking at those 2 in this broadcast. They pull the strings. They are special players for their teams. They're special players within this league. I thought, seeing Carlos in person again on last Saturday, we did the wild game in Atlanta 3-3 where, yes, Carlos had a brace, but New England didn't do much on the ball that whole game, right? I mean, that was as purloined of a point as there will ever be for New England. But then to be there in Gillette last weekend, he was great, I thought. And he's in incredible form right now, obviously. And so is Luciano Acosta, who, is finally, I think, like, carrying a team. And he was really, really good for DC. And then the whole thing with PSG went down, and it was his reaction. I don't know if I should say his reaction, but his play dipped straight up that next year, right? Him and Lucha him and Wayne Rooney were such this good duo. Oh man, he's going to get a move to PSG. He flies to Paris, right, to get it done. And it collapses for whatever reason. And then he didn't, like, the next 2019 didn't have a good year. He goes to Liga MX, goes to Atlas, comes back to Cincinnati, and is kind of back to that top Lucho. But they had him in 2021 for the majority of that year. The 2021 season that, as I just said, they only accumulated 20 points in. So Pat Noonan has done a great job of getting Lucho back to his peak DC United form, and probably even better, to be honest. And man, this is what a matchup this weekend between those 2.
We just talked about it. You have 2 top stars coming in with Acosta and Hill that you're going to be calling, but there's also a lot of rumors surrounding both teams when it comes to transfers. We hear about Georgi Petrovic being wanted by Manchester United which is just astounding to hear this number associated with the New England Revolution. $30 million. Just, it's like Dr. Evil. $1 million. I mean, it's just like
times 30.
Times 30. It's astounding money when we're talking about the New England Revolution. And then also Noel Buck. And now on the other side, you have Brandon Vasquez, who was allegedly linked to Borussia Mönchengladbach, but apparently Cincinnati doesn't want to let him go. So both of these teams may lose bodies this season. Who do you think, Jake, is more equipped to handle such midseason turnover, Cincinnati or New England?
Look, the only reason why I'll say, specifically with the transfers that you just brought up, potential transfers you brought up, the only reason I'll say New England is because the masterful way in which they transitioned from Matt Turner to Djordje Petrovic is remarkable. I mean, Matt Turner, when he was sold to Arsenal, was arguably the best goalkeeper in the league. Him or Andre Blake, right? They were 1 and 2. They sign a guy for less than $1 million, right? Who, let's be honest, nobody in Major League Soccer had heard of in Djordje Petrovic. And he's better. I think he's better, right? Like Taylor was talking about on the broadcast last week. He said it definitively. He's better. It was a remarkable piece of business and a piece of scouting from New England. Talked to Bruce Arena about it. I remember this preseason. We were doing the game against Orlando. It was like a dress rehearsal for MLS season pass down in Orlando, sitting in a hotel. And Bruce said that it was the quickest decision he ever made on a player. He saw 5 minutes of footage and was like, yep, we want this guy. Now, whether that's hyperbole or not, I don't know, but it certainly speaks to Djordje's level, the quality of player that he is. And he's been all of that since coming to New England. So why I say they can handle it is they did it with Matt Turner. So maybe there's somebody else in the pipeline that they can bring in to do a straight swap that'll work out great. I think for Cincinnati,
was that lull there for a little bit. They had Earl Edwards Jr., they had Brad Knight, and they couldn't replace Turner immediately. I mean, obviously, Frostbite Gate, whether or not you believe that is another thing.
Exactly, right, because Matt was on the roster. Right. To begin
so, but that the way you say it is that you believe that the Revs have the right scouting pieces in place to replace Petrovic pretty quickly.
Yeah,
so you think
I'm being slightly facetious in that regard, right? Like it's going to be difficult. They did it once, and did they? There's another way to look at it. Did they get away with it once, right?
So
by selling that,
right? You would agree that they probably need to keep him for the rest of the year if you want to make an MLS Cup run.
Probably. I think he's that important. That being said, it's a business, right? So if Manchester United or another team comes in and they offer a number that New England can't refuse, can't turn down,
but he's going to play behind De Gea. Like if you're Petro, why
that's
would
his
you want
decision.
that?
That's his decision, right? I would agree when it comes to that. But that's his decision. That's not New England's decision to make. You know what I mean? Sure. So if Manchester comes in with a number that New England can't turn down and Djordje wants to go, right, then what are you going to do? But that's you got to get. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Djordje's thinking when it comes to that, because playing for Manchester United is a big deal, right?
But it's so frustrating though, just because
I know
you saw what it looked like last year when you didn't have Tajon.
Didn't Turner kind of do the same thing, where you weren't sure if he was going to start for Arsenal?
Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
Oh yeah,
it's the same exact.
He's in that situation right now. A year later, yeah.
So then you,
but you were a little bit more prepared for that. You had 6 months to prepare from December to June to get ready for the Matt Turner departure. I can't see them turning around another Djordje that's going to help you win an MLS Cup that quickly, especially the way he talks about.
But they'll know. Yeah. They'll know that people are going to. Djordje Petrovic is not going to have a 10-year career for the New England Revolution, right?
Sure.
So they've got to know, as of even towards the middle of last year, when they realized how good Djordje was, they had to be thinking about what's next, right? Just like with Matt Turner, they were thinking that when they realized
it's a business. At the end of the day, it's tough to turn down that cash, man.
Do re mi fa sol lido.
And by the way, he's going from MLS to arguably the best league and the most storied franchise ever. So
right. It's the reality of MLS, right? And I'm not an advocate of changing the calendar at all, because this is the United. I grew up in Chicago. Like this is the United States. We have different weather, a different weather situation than a lot of countries in Europe. But this is the reality of the MLS calendar being the way it is and the European calendar being the way it is, in that a lot more moves happen in the summer, right, in Europe. So the MLS is always going to have that, I don't want to say problem, but always going to be in the situation where there's going to be players that are sold in the middle of the season, and that could hamper a team that for the first half of the year looks like a big contender. And that unfortunately is going to be the reality of this league. And it's the reality of the economics of kind of global football, so to speak.
So let's go back to the game. FC Cincinnati hosting the Revolution on Saturday night. You can see it obviously on Apple TV with yourself on the call with Taylor Twellman. Another player. So we talked about Acosta. We've talked about Brandon Vasquez. This player is an all-star for a reason. Watching some games back with FC Cincinnati over the last month, Barriel has just been playing so well on the left side. He's got such a dangerous cross in. He seems to be in the right place to link up with these players. So what have you seen from that player?
Barriel's a really good player, isn't he? On that and as a left wing back provides kind of like Kai Wagner in Philadelphia. I think not that they're similar players, but they provide, they're defenders, kind of labeled defenders, right, as wing backs, but they're so important in the attack. He can whip in an incredible ball. I think a deserved all-star, especially if you have to put together a coherent team. It can't be like the best 11 where there's 4 center backs, right? That are, or, even 3 center backs and the only defenders on a best 11. So he's a really good player. And that's certainly something to watch for if you're New England. He's not going to have Brandon Vasquez to serve the ball into. That will, help in a way if you're New England, as you said. But he's a really good player, and they still have Dominic Badji. They still have Sergio Santos, whether they play Yakubo up top. They have depth, they have quality there. So Barriel's really good. That left foot, fantastic. And I think the smallest shin guards in Major League Soccer as well, if you watch him play.
The smaller the better, in my experience. Although don't protect
absolutely.
too much, it just doesn't interfere with your dribbling as much.
Amen. I agree. I think Alvaro would agree.
The last one from me. Carlos Heel gets snubbed from the MLS All-Star game. It's a fan vote, so did the Revs not show up for Carlos, maybe?
Oh, you called it?
I mean, listen, everybody wants to say that, oh, my God, I can't believe Wayne Rooney didn't pick Carlos Heel. Blah, blah, blah. This is the fan vote.
It's not all a fan vote, right? That's legitimate because the fans picked 12 of the 26, and then Don Garber picks 2. So I think Wayne gets 12, if I'm right on that number. So there are 12 coaches picks there. So he didn't pick Lucho, right? So he didn't pick Carlos. He didn't pick Lucho. So that's hey, if Carlos wants to use that as motivation, and whenever DC, if I don't know if you guys have DC still on the schedule, use that as motivation, right? One thing I will say is, Carlos is in great form right now, right? And has really kind of turned it on late. I don't know when those decisions had to be made. Like Wayne Rooney may have had to make his decisions 3 weeks ago, which is 4 goals and 4 assists ago, right? For Carlos Heel. So maybe a little bit of leeway there. And there's a lot of really good attacking number 10 type players in this league. I mean, when you look at this roster, you've got Luciano Acosta, Thiago Almada, Hani Mukhtar, Ricky Puig, Lucas Zelarayan, right? All on the roster. Does Carlos Heel fit in? You've got so many number 10s. I'll say Ricky Puig, who is an incredible player, and to me, no doubt one of the best players in this league. That's the switch I would make this year, would be Carlos for Ricky, because I think of just what their teams have done, and even just pure kind of goals, assists would go to Carlos as well. So, but everybody else, are you going to say Thiago Almada's not deserved? No way. Luciano Acosta totally deserved. Hani totally deserved. Lucas Zelarayan totally deserved. So difficult decisions to make, but you can put it on Wayne Rooney, and if you're Carlos, you can use that as motivation for sure.
They play on July 16th. I know you got anything for Jake? I know you've been trying to.
Oh yeah, I was behind the scenes. Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge. Maybe we should send this to Apple and show what type of pro they have in their hand. We lose video footage, and you don't miss a beat, man. It was great.
I did local news for 8 years as a sports anchor in Butte, Montana, starting in Butte, Montana, Missoula, Montana, Eugene, Oregon.
Butte, Montana.
Man. My first job. Hey, Butte is gorgeous this time of year. So trust me, man. Video going down, teleprompters going down, audio going out. I've been through it all. So this is small, a Zoom screen going blank. This is 2023. We're all used to that. Yeah, exactly.
You obviously have it great. You've been, in the leagues, almost 9-10 years now.
Yep.
Do you at all miss doing local news? You at all
No.
miss doing? No, I
No.
can imagine.
I mean, you got a
don't
nice
blame you.
gig. I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I
shout
wouldn't
out
miss
to
that.
Butte.
don't.
He's on
Yeah.
Apple TV.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I mean,
go
yeah.
hang out on
Right.
Yellowstone Ranch, or
But
Yeah,
Jake's one
oh,
of, like,
man.
the last bastions of people that did it, where you go to a small market,
I am.
build yourself up, and then you go on the host Sports Center one day. Not many people do it that way anymore. Everybody has a freaking podcast on YouTube and expects to get paid six figures.
Like us.
Isn't that us?
It's exactly right, though. But here's like I'm of the age, right, where that wasn't even a possibility coming out of college. I'll age myself. I graduated college in 2007, so like right on that cusp of you had to send a physical DVD. Right, it wasn't a VHS, but a DVD to like every small market TV station in the country, and just hope one of them got. I probably sent out 40, and Butte, Montana were the ones to write back and give me a job. So that was how you started. That's how you had to do it, because there wasn't YouTube. There wasn't like Instagram or TikTok where you could create your own content like that.
So do you prefer the old way,
yeah,
the school way of doing things, or the new school way?
Hey, I did it the old school way. It worked for me. It got me where I am now, but there's a lot more opportunity now, the new school. But it worked. Like, I'm not a hot take guy, right? So for me, like it worked, because I don't think I would have like broken through in that regard in this sort of environment. But from a soccer soccer's always been my favorite sport. MLS has always been kind of my league of focus. Growing up in Chicago, I was a huge Chicago Fire fan. So would have always been my dream job back from when I'm like a teenager. And now there are opportunities for entry-level soccer play-by-play jobs with USL Championship, with USL League One, League Two. You're showing games, MLS Next Pro, obviously, and even MLS Next. Again, academy games being broadcast. Like that wasn't around when I graduated college in 2007. The A-League was there, and there were maybe a couple rudimentary streams, but they'd be called by like the PR guy for the Minnesota Thunder or whatever it was, right?
Yeah,
so this is like, for if I were coming out of college now, that's the route I would try to go, and maybe I would have gotten into soccer play-by-play even quicker because of the opportunity.
You have to come out to a game next year when Rhode Island FC gets going here in the
Let's
USL.
go, man. So my good friend, fellow MLS season pass broadcaster, longtime broadcast partner with the Portland Timbers, Ross Smith, is a URI alum, and he is buzzing for Rhode Island FC. Yeah, he had one of the best Rhode Island Rams of all time, just below Andy Williams is Ross.
We're pumped. We're definitely pumped for that, and we talked to Taylor about it. His former teammate Connell Smith,
yes,
in the manager
Parkhurst.
position.
Michael
So
Parkhurst, yeah.
Parkhurst involved with
Parkhurst
the club,
is involved, right? Yep.
So last
That's
one for me,
awesome,
Jake.
awesome.
You talk about
Yep.
being around the league for this long. I've kind of asked this the last few weeks since the Lionel Messi news has been announced, but I want to include that with the group of players that you just talked about and the number 10 spot for MLS in this All-Star game. Just watching the maturity of the league, and now with Messi coming in, I mean, it's just got to be so incredible to see what's happening with MLS right now.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I mean, the league has grown immensely, right? And for me, on the field, you kind of always expected and hoped. I think off the field is where it's really taking a big view of it, right? Is where it's grown so much. And you got right. The Revolution are an original team, right? So New England knows, and they've seen it all. And the Revolution have played in Naperville, Illinois, against the Chicago Fire in a D3 football stadium that's narrow on turf that 2 weeks before it hosted, my Evanston Township High School in the state championship game. And now, the Fire are playing there the next week. South Lake Carroll High School in Dallas with black end zones, right? Like and then the big NFL stadiums and the minor league baseball ballparks and Robertson Stadium in Houston, Spartan Stadium in San Jose, to where the league is now. We're going to go to this gorgeous venue of TQL Stadium that's going to be packed out with 25,000 people in Cincinnati, Ohio, right? Like when the Revs were going to MLS Cup, when Taylor was winning MVPs, like that would have blown everybody's mind to be like, yeah, there's going to be 25,000 people in a sold out hundreds of millions of dollars stadium in the middle of Cincinnati. And the same thing's happening in Nashville, and the same thing's happening in Austin, Texas, and Portland, Oregon. The Timbers are like the St. Louis. St. Louis is one that they are like they should have been in '96, right? Like that has been like the historic soccer city. Charlotte, Atlanta, getting 60,000 people in SEC country, right?
Yeah.
It's remarkable. So to me, the growth of the league in that regard it still gives me goosebumps to talk about.
And
like,
MLS
it's
season
incredible.
pass. I mean, the coverage
Sure.
itself is incredible. You know, we come from like just 2 years ago, we barely had a pre-show here in New England.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it was
Didn't
like
have a pre-show
It was
in New
like
Took it away.
It was literally Charmed. You know, reruns and then right into all of
Big
a sudden
Bang
the
Theory.
kickoff. Yeah, the whistle's blowing for kickoff. And now with MLS season pass, I mean, it's just been it's so incredible to see that and the coverage that you're getting. You guys do such an incredible job there, and it's awesome to, as a fan and as somebody who covers the league. It's been tremendous.
I don't know if Jake has have to suffer too much though, because he's come from one of the soccer hotbeds, so they treat that thing out there like it's the New England Patriots on game day for Portland Timbers. All right, anyways, Jake Zivin, he's on the call again for the New England Revolution and FC Cincinnati 1 versus 2 on MLS season pass.
Get hyped.
This weekend. Maybe could decide what's going to happen with the Supporter Shield race. The Revs still in it, not out of it yet. Injuries are killing them, though. That's where the transfer window comes in. Will Wanyama come here? Probably not, but it's still exciting to think that they're probably going to get somebody big. Jake, thanks so much, buddy.
Hey, guys, great to chat anytime.
All right, Nick, we're out of here.
Bruce.
Great. Thank you.